G'day everyone, welcome back to Controlled Recoil. My name's Tom and I thought I'd do a quick video today on how to make a cartridge effective and utilize it efficiently for hunting. So I've had a lot of questions about why I use the types of projectiles I do and how some of the smaller cartridges I've been using are so effective even on larger game. So we'll cover those points. Now, this isn't the usual video I do, so if you're new to the channel, make sure you check out some of the hunting videos that I do. That's the usual type of content. But I thought I would do this video just because there's been so much interest and so many questions, so I thought it might help out some people. Now, be aware, I'm sort of doing this off the cuff, so I'm going to focus on 5 points just to keep it streamlined, and obviously it's a very large topic, so I'm not going to be able to cover all of it in one video. But for the people starting out, this should just give you an idea of what to look for and maybe a few points that aren't talked about much, okay? So this is going to be aimed at hunting. Obviously, the purpose of hunting, we're having to achieve a quick, ethical kill. And to do this, we obviously need the combination of the projectile choice and sufficient energy and velocity and things like that to create that sufficient damage to kill it cleanly. So let's get started. The 5 things. Now, the reason why I'm going to talk about this is often we're seeing people compare ballistics tables to compare cartridge and how effective that cartridge should be. It's a lot of valuable information there. I'm not saying that that's wrong, but I will say that it doesn't necessarily directly equate to the same performance on the animal. There's a few points there that aren't being shown on those tables. So let's go over this. The tables usually have energy, velocity, projectile weight, and then things like maybe wind drift or ballistic coefficient. And these are all very valuable points and they'll give you a very good starting point, but there's a couple of things that are not being shown and they're very important, and that is the projectile construction, okay? We're also going to touch on target resistance and the way those combination of things make or break a cartridge by the way they utilize that energy and velocity. So 5 things. We're going to start with accuracy. Accuracy is the key. It's number 1. There's no substitute. You have to be able to be accurate with your shooting. Now, this accuracy also includes a good understanding of the layout of the anatomy of an animal with the lungs and the heart and all the vital organs that are going to be key components to get that clean kill that we want to achieve. So where the spine and all these things are and where they're situated, it's going to play a really vital role, especially if you're using a lighter constructed bullet, and I will explain the reasons for that. So anyway, the first one's accuracy. Again, it doesn't matter how much power you've got in a cartridge. If you don't have accuracy, you will end up wounding animals. You must be able to hit vitals efficiently. So number 1, we'll put that to the side. Number 2 is energy. Now this is potential damage or stopping power or whatever you'd like to kill, whatever you'd like to call it, the killing power. Now it's only potential. That's only potential stopping power or potential damage. The reason why I say that is we need to harness that, and the same with velocity. Velocity falls into the same sort of category in the fact that, you know, we have energy, we have velocity, but some cartridges will have more energy and less velocity, you know, and they utilize their damage by using a larger caliber projectile with a larger mass. And these are usually cartridges that we see getting used at the shorter ranges, 30-30s and 45-70 and that style of cartridge. It's utilizing the mass of the projectile to have the energy rather than velocity. Contrast to that, the 5.56, something like similar to that, it's a very fast moving projectile, and the cartridge design relies on that speed for that violent impact and for that projectile to make the sufficient damage it needs to. So 2 sort of contrasts of styles and the way they use that the combination of the mass and the weight of the projectile and the velocity, that energy combination. The key component to all of this is utilizing that, and that's your projectile. So your projectile, we can have projectiles that are constructed with a interbond, or you'll see interbond, accubond, controlled expansion, these type of words getting used. This is where the projectile generally has the jacket and some sort of connection between the jacket and the core of the bullet. And the reason for this is it maintains its weight, and because it maintains its weight and mass, it maintains that momentum, and this also slows down that expansion of the projectile. So for the people starting out, we want that deformation of the projectile, we want that expansion, and as that projectile expands, it creates a larger wound channel, and it also, while doing that, it creates more resistance, okay? And because of that, it's transferring that energy faster. So that shock and energy is going to the animal, combined with that wound channel. This is where we're getting that efficient, quick, clean kill. Now, if we're using a softer projectile, that whole process is going to be sped up. So it's going to be a more violent impact. It's going to have more rapid fragmentation maybe, or at least expansion. And this is going to mean it's going to penetrate less into the animal before it starts expanding. Now, the key component here is any one of these projectiles needs to get to the vitals to kill the animal cleanly. So your target resistance, which is the last thing, that's going to play a large role in the way the projectile acts, but also how far it's traveling through and at what depth that it's actually reaching its maximum expansion. So this is something that's critical to get right. If you have too soft a projectile traveling too fast and the impact is too violent, you may see rapid expansion and not enough penetration to get to the vitals. Contrast to that, if you're using a harder constructed projectile out further, where your energy and velocity is lower, this is going to make the impact less violent, and this is where you may risk a lack of expansion and the bullet just penciling through and essentially causing a slow death by not transferring that energy effectively. And this is what I wanted to point out, is you can have a lot of energy and it still doesn't kill well because of poor projectile choice, depending on your situation, depending on your operating range, and depending on that animal target resistance, okay? The animal's size and mass and how much of that tissue you have to get through. So we can be intelligent about this. Again, this comes back to the accuracy. We can choose to initiate bullet expansion if we, we understand the anatomy of the animal very well. We can choose to hit bone. This is going to, solid parts of the construction in the shoulder of an animal are going to initiate expansion a lot faster. So if we're using a harder projectile and we're shooting out further, and we know that we're getting to that sort of more limitations of that projectile expanding reliably, we can aim for the point of the shoulder where we're going to hit bone, and it's going to be much more effective then at transferring that energy and making sufficient damage. Again, if we're using a lighter projectile when using it up close, this is where we might want to avoid that bone, because we risk maybe getting a lack of penetration to get to those vitals. So we might want to avoid the big structures and shoot just behind the shoulder, maybe get an angle, quartering away shot or something to fast track that bullet into the vitals. We know it's going to expand very fast, and we want to maybe protect that projectile a little bit. Now, we can balance both of these things out by using a softer projectile with more mass, and this way, although it's going to expand very fast, it's still going to have sufficient mass to travel to the vitals, or we can use a lighter constructed bullet, with a harder construction to balance that out as well. So it's the combination of these things that you don't really get to see just by looking at ballistics tables, and that's why it is quite important in hunting situations to really work out what your intended animal that you're hunting, how much bone and muscle you're gonna have to get through to get to those vitals, and work back from there. What range you're operating at, and what projectile choice have you got. Now you can find out, most manufacturers will put the minimum requirement for the energy and velocity that you need for that bullet to expand reliably. So look at that, and you can work back from those tables to see your maximum effective range essentially, because you can take that minimum requirement and look at what distance on the table do we end up hitting that minimum requirement. So that'll give you a good starting point. Again, you can kind of cheat this a little bit by using a really good combination and the accuracy and being smart about where you aim. So this is why we can use things like 22 magnums on goat-sized game and still have very good effect, even larger depending on the range. Do I recommend using really light calibers on large game? No, I don't, but it is possible, and you can do it very effectively if you understand those critical points on where to aim and how that projectile is going to react. So there's a lot out there. Like, we could talk for days on this. I don't want to overdo it, but hopefully those 5 things really help you out: accuracy, energy, velocity, projectile construction, and lastly that target resistance. The combination of that is what's going to make your cartridge effective, not just necessarily what you're seeing on those ballistics tables. Again, it's a great place to start, but it is only a start point, I feel. And yeah, I hope that's just added a bit of insight to maybe the understanding getting out further where we use those soft projectiles. I use the soft projectiles out long because we have less energy and less velocity left, and a soft projectile takes less energy and velocity to initiate reliable expansion, and that's still creating the sufficient damage we would have seen at close ranges with a hard projectile. And we also, because we've got less velocity and less energy, it's meaning we still get sufficient penetration because it balances that rate of expansion out. And the same goes, the opposite goes for that close range stuff. A harder projectile moving faster, you use that harder construction to slow down the that expansion, because we know the velocity is very high and the energy is very high. So it's balancing that impact and balancing the distance that you need to go into the animal to have that expansion happening at the correct part of the animal, which is the vitals. So yeah, hopefully that covers off everything. And yeah, any questions, throw them down below. Really, just really stoked with the amount of support this channel's got. It's huge thanks to you guys. Keep it up, and I will have some hunting content for you in the near future. Now, for those of you out there that are having great success, let's hear what you're using in the comments. Let's help out new people starting out in the sport and lift their success and give them the confidence to select the right equipment. So what are you having success with? What caliber, projectile type, what distances are you operating at, and what's that animal you're hunting? Put it in the comments below. I'd be super interested to know what people are having success with. And as always, stay safe out there. We will catch you in the next one. Cheers.